Hey guys, it's Dom here, and today we've got another one of those videos where I'm reviewing your custom cards which have been sent in. And first, I'd like to say a massive thank you to Spider Colo, Yum36, Pathogen 10,000, and Alduin 1298, just because these guys sent me quite a few cards. And I've just gone out and picked some of my favourites from each of their collections. I believe they're all on the Elder Scrolls Legends Discord, so give it a check out if you've got the time to. Okay, so starting with Yum36, we have some of his cards, such as Runaway, the 1-cost 1/2 for Strength, with the ability Prophecy. If you mulligan Runaway, banish it instead. Now this is a really interesting card, because not only is it quite a cheap card, easy to get out, but you also have the option to mulligan it at the start of the game if you do draw it, and just have it gone from your deck, which allows you to have a bit more efficiency in that deck you have. So say you actually want to have like a 47 card deck, you could run 3 of these, hope you draw all 3 turn 1 and get rid of them. And I do think it'd be really nice if more cards did come to Legends and they actually worked a bit more of the mulligan mechanic, maybe made some cards which allowed you to mulligan mid-game or on the end of your turn, something like that. Just, it's something that they really didn't go into much detail with in Legends, sadly. Second of all, we've got the Hidden Bosma, a 2-cost 2/1 with the ability that if this card would break a rune, instead of your opponent drawing a card, your opponent gains 5 health, and the most expensive card in the hand is reduced by 2. This is quite nice, because obviously you won't really know what card it's decreasing the cost of, so it does have a bit of risk still, but it does stop your opponent, if they're playing a massive and heavy prophecy deck, from just wailing you with prophecies. And, you know, if you've got like multiple of these out in the field, you can get past multiple runes on one turn, but if not, it's only one rune that you're actually stopping your opponent from having that prophecy. And with some cards like Blind Moth Priest, this would be like a really nice workaround. And finally, we have Fire Juggle, a 3-cost action, which you choose a lane and it will deal 5 damage to a random enemy creature in that lane. I really like this because, although that is quite a bit of damage for a low cost, you don't have that full choice over who it damages. Obviously, if there's only one creature in a lane, you do, but it's still that kind of risk for a big reward kind of card, and I really like ones like this. Okay, next we have the Patient Sentry, a 3-cost 3/3, and at the end of your turn, if you have 7 or more max magicka, this card will gain 1 power and health. Yeah, cards like this are just really nice for endurance. I'd love to see Argonian decks which are based around this, and there are still plenty of cards in the game to already do this, but the more the merrier, I suppose. And yeah, there's nothing really I can say that's bad about this. It's just a really nice card. Decent stats for early game, but much better if you can get it late game. Then we have Prisoner Exchange, a 6-cost action which will give a friendly creature to your opponent, then steal an enemy creature. This can be very powerful. See, there's a card in Yu-Gi-Oh! Yeah, I'm bringing Yu-Gi-Oh! Now, called Creature Swap, which basically has the same effect to this, where you choose a card to give to your opponent, and your opponent gives you one of their cards. And it was always really kind of abusable if your opponent has a few weak monsters and a strong one, because you destroy all their strong monsters and then basically force them to hand over the really powerful one. Giving you the option to choose which one you're stealing without having it locked or silenced or anything like that could result in some very powerful swings. Say you're like, oh, here's my Vardvark, now I'm just going to take your Alduin. So I think it might need to have some sort of restriction on what you steal, or something to do with the actual trade values itself. And finally we have Unvanquished Sanctuary, a 3-cost 5/4, which costs 1 more for each of your attributes. Lovely card, great for neutral decks, and as you may be able to tell, I'm a big fan of neutral decks, but it's just because I want them to work, but they don't usually work. Okay, so next we move on to Pathogen 10,000's collection, and I apologise if I am butchering your name completely. We have the Claws of Hircine, a 3-cost support for strength, which is ongoing and means all of your friendly creatures have +2 power whenever you break a rune, basically. And then they would all turn into werewolves, which has some cool little synergy with that Reachman card, which allows you to kind of buff everything of the same strength. And obviously the cards already in the game with beast form, like Companion's Harbinger, or his name is, the one which, when he forms, gives all your werewolves +1/+1. There's a lot of cool synergies that can be done here, and I do really like the idea of werewolf decks, say like cards with the Underforge that just don't get used. Be nice to see them actually get some play. Then we have Solid Companion, a 3-cost 2/5 with Regenerate and Rally, which is just an excellent kind of early game card which can very easily snowball as you're buffing cards in your hand, making them more and more powerful, while your opponent needs to get rid of it in one turn. I thought this could actually be so strong that maybe 2-4 as the stats might seem a bit more reasonable. I mean, 2-5 is still really good. It's just in case your opponent's a bit busted and can't really summon out much. This could very easily get very strong. And finally, we have Cold Dealer, a free cost 1/1 with summon, draw a card, and if you have a creature with ward, draw another card. Yeah, this is just a really nice simple draw power card. Not very strong on its own, but with the correct board control, it's just really nice for the archetype and helps intelligence. Okay, so moving on to the second half of this collection, we have the 4-cost farmer called Gentle Beatdown. I mean, for the name, I'd suggest something maybe like Farmer Usurper or something like that. It's a 4-free strength card and has the ability, if you have more health than your opponent, all friendly creatures gain cover. So basically you get a second Shadow Lane for a bit, which is very, very powerful, to be honest. And I can see it getting a bit out of hand, especially on how long it goes on. But to be honest, your guards aren't going to get cover, and your opponent can still just then go right for your face and ignore your units, which would then put you below that health, so they'd lose the cover. So yeah, no, I can see it being fair. Next we have Arts of the Shadowfoot, a 6-cost action which plays the highest cost card from your opponent's hand with 3 cost or less. This is quite wacky, to be honest. I think it is quite nice because it kind of gets rid of something from your opponent's hand, and it does seem like it might want some form of... Nah, it's a 6-cost, which is getting a 3-cost or less card from your opponent. So it's going to be very interesting, but it's not going to steal something which is going to be their entire game plan usually. Unless maybe you kind of like nab a Swindler's Market from a Market Archer deck. And then finally we have Bait the Gods, which is a bit of a weird card. It puts 8 Reflective Automatons in your graveyard, and you have to exalt 3 to draw a creature from your deck of a type of your choice, which you can see is clearly made for Alduin, but obviously due to RNG you might not get Alduin and you might get something else. You could obviously use this to kind of fish for something else that you might want. So it's a bit nice just to kind of get a strong unit, but you'd have to choose it from a very specific archetype. So it has its ups and its downs, but in the end it does give you a lot in the graveyard and can easily still be countered by cards like Piercing Twilight. So I'd say it's decent, just very, very oddly specific. Right, so moving on to Spider Colo, we have the Curious Doppelganger, a 0-cost 1/1 Daedra, which basically works like Gardener's Harvest, but for units, and will keep on changing at the end of all of your turns, and would be really nice for decks which are running things like Unite the Houses, or just want to have a bit of wacky RNG. I mean, the fact that it's Daedra does technically go with Invade, but because it's changing all the time, you probably can't really rely on that for what you're getting off. It's quite a cool card though, definitely something that would be worth a little spin in some intelligence decks, or like I said, Unite the Houses. Okay, next we have Brave Adventurer, a 0-cost 1/1, who when summoned basically just takes away one of your enemy's cover, and because it's Imperial and Nord, it goes really well with a lot of those kind of single types decks, which are either Crusader or I guess House Redrun, because you're running strength here. So yeah, it is just a nice card, and the number of times where I've kind of been a bit cucked over because they've got something in the Shadow Lane and I've got no way of killing it and I haven't got a guard and I'm on really low health. A card like this would basically just give you the ability to hit back at your opponent and would be really nice. So finally we've got the Novice Witch, again 0-cost 1/1, and last gasp will put a curse in your hand. So it's just kind of nice to have a bit of early game board control, and when it dies you then have something to kind of siphon your units and hit with kind of finish offs, leaf lurkers, or just anything in the goblin deck really. I mean obviously it's not a goblin, but it still kind of works with it. Right, so moving on, we have Leading Imperial Scout. This is probably one of the cards with my favourite art from the entire video. Don't know why, it's just really nice looking. And it has Last Gasp, put a Scouting Patrol in your hand. Something really good for House Lalu decks, or just anyone which relies on actions, because everyone just wants a bit of early game board control. maybe something from like Swindler's Market, or just tokens and Imperial decks. There's a lot of different uses that you can have for this card. I can definitely see it fitting into a deck with like lots of Training Grounds, Divine Fervours and stuff like that, and just summoning this as like a really strong 0 cost card, and then obviously getting 2 more Imperials, which are then buffed up a lot more from those previous mentioned cards. And yeah, I think this would be an excellent card because it is just very, very simple. Next, we have Solitude Bartender, a 0 cost 1/1, which when summoned heals a friendly creature. Yeah, this is also really nice in case you've got a massive card and you're playing against agility, and you know they've got quite a few finish offs and leaf lurkers and stuff like this, and you're trying to avoid it, or just your opponent's summoning a bunch of monsters to try and kill your card. Just summon this and it's kind of problem solved. And finally we have Mad Orcish Cook, which is when you summon it, you must transform a friendly creature into a sweet roll, which, you know, is quite amusing, and in decks running things like Cicero, you could actually make a bit of use out of this just by summoning this, turning a card that you're done with into a sweet roll, having Cicero attack that, gaining all his health back, and drawing 2 cards. So yeah, I think that's a lot of banter and would be a nice little card in the game. Moving on to another one of his sets, which had no theme, we have the Elixir Swordmaster, a 4 cost 2/4, which when summoned equips all your friendly creatures with a steel dagger. Just something really nice for those item decks. Say you got like a Harvester of Swords, or whatever he's called, or a few other cards like that, or Sparksmith, that's another really good one. This would be something that does a lot of a big swing in one turn, and is kind of why I expect this to have a, you know, not the best stat block for a 4 cost, and it is obviously very much made for those decks which will have a lot of synergy for whenever you play items. Next we have Mountain Ambush, a 5 cost card, which has the ability summon 2 free mountain trolls, which battles another enemy creature. Empower +1 mountain troll. Honestly, because of that empower ability, I'd assume it should kind of have 1 mountain troll originally, just because obviously if you've got a deck which is quite aggro, let's say you hit face 4 times, you're then flooding the rest of your field with free mountain trolls, which, yeah, they might all get destroyed, but if there's nowhere left for it to attack, you're just going to get a bunch of mountain trolls on the field for relatively cheap. And when comparing it to cards like, what is it, Imperial Swarm, it's the one which summons 4 1/1 grunts, that only being 1 less. For 1 cost extra, this is already quite a bit more, and has like that kind of hint at removal. So yeah, I'd probably start off at 1 mountain troll. And next we have Soul Obliteration, a 6 cost card with Drain, and will deal damage to a creature equal to the number of creatures in your discard pile. Basically, this is just a really nice card for late game. Say you're about to lose, but you've got like 10 skeletons in your graveyard. You can basically just destroy anything on your opponent's side of the field and gain that much health. So yeah, I think maybe actually this should be a 7 cost, but that's my opinion. I'd love to know what you guys think, because I feel like these are actually some really good cards here. Some more from this set are the Swamp Guardian, Solitude Guard, and Viper's Reach. So starting off with the Swamp Guardian, a 3 cost 2/5 with Guard. This has the passive ability that your hand, deck, and discard pile can't be affected by your opponent. Just straight up, yes. Again, one of my favourite card arts from the set here, and an ability like that is just really nice. It stops them from just messing with your hand with, what was it, Hallowed Death Priest. That's always a pain in my arse. Cards like Piercing Twilight, stuff like that. It just stops your opponent from kind of having a go at that. But because this has Guard, but it does have a decent amount of health, it's not too overpowered just because your opponent can quite easily just get it in reach and start attacking it. Then we have Solitude Guard, a 3 cost 2/3 with Prophecy. Sorry, not Prophecy, Guard, and gives all the guards in your deck Prophecy. Again, this is something really nice for a Guard deck, and because it has Guard, its ability being quite powerful doesn't really matter because your opponent always has a way of just hitting at it. And finally, we have the 7 cost Viper's Reach, which will summon a Territorial Viper in each lane, which is really nice because usually to summon 2 Territorial Vipers, it's 2 cards and it's 8 cost. This is just a bit cheaper, and it summons 1 in each lane for you, and because Agility has a lot of movement cards, you can kind of use this just to clear out where your opponent's being a massive hassle on the field. And in most situations it would work out as a double removal card, but because it's not confirmed, it does deserve this value of 7, and I think it is an excellent card, to be honest. Okay, now onto his Elixir Set, which I think is really cool, and I definitely didn't nab for last week's video, 100%. I didn't actually see this set, I promise. Never could set myself up like that. We have the Weakening Elixir, a 6-cost support for endurance with 3 uses, and when activated sets the creature's health to 1. Excellent for, like, say, goblin decks because they've got curses, just to make this basically a removal card. Or just one for, like, they've got a really powerful guard, you want to get past it, reduce its health to 1, anything will kill it. Just a very nice card, and because it's not confirming removal, I wouldn't even say it's that powerful. Then we've got the Elixir of Magic Resistance, a 3-cost intelligent card, and when this is activated, your opponent can't target a chosen friendly creature with actions until your next turn. This is just a really great effect, and there's that one item in Strength that has this effect, and it's just hilarious watching it. Like, you use it, and then because your opponent semi-forgets about it, they're kind of like constantly hovering over that card, and you forget, yeah, you're trying to pierce and javelin it, aren't you? Guess you're not going to, though. So something like this with intelligence, it's very nice, and it would kind of make kind of aggro decks or ones which work on buffing, say like item decks, would really love this. Then we have the Elixir of Burning Strength, which will deal 1 damage to a creature and then give it 2 extra health. And because it doesn't specify your side or their side, if your opponent's got a card on 1 health from, say, a Weakening Elixir or any other means, you can just use this to pop it. And because obviously if you've got a creature of high health, you can use that as well, so it's a multi-functioning tool, which is really nice. Then we've also got the Elixir of Magica, which might seem a bit weird at first because you only gain 1 Magica for the turn you use it. It's something that you might play early and then wait to those later rounds as like an extra ring, almost. So obviously if you do have the ring, that could be 2 extra Magica on that turn. If you don't have the ring, it's just having the ability of a ring, basically. And something like that would be really nice for those decks that are trying to reach those high value cards quite early on, to kind of get an edge over your opponent, say like dragon decks, or any other scout deck which is kind of not grabbing any of its other Magicka boosting cards. And finally, from the Elixir set, we have the Calming Elixir, a 3-cost willpower card with 3 uses, and when activated will take away 2 power from a creature. This is just really nice because obviously cards with lethal, you use this on them if they've got low strength. It means their lethal will become redundant and basically takes away the keyword for a turn, allowing you to just wail on those cards. Or if it's a matter of saving one of your cards by reducing their power by 2. It's just very nice, basically, is what I'm trying to say. It's something which is good for slowing down your opponent, and it would be a lot nicer if it lasted till your next turn, but then you'd have to bump up the cost to probably a 4 or 5. So for free, I think this effect is very fair and very balanced. Right, and last but definitely not least, we have Alduin 1298 set. And first of all, we've got some Dwemer cards to look at, starting with the Etherium Forge, which is definitely an excellent theme, which they could have made cards off. And that starts with a 5-cost support with 1 use, and when activated it will equip a random ethereal item to a creature, and when an item is equipped to a creature, give that creature a keyword. So this is something you could actually just hold on the field to keep on giving cards keywords, but then again it's very susceptible to removal and could mean that you lose that Ethereum item. And some of the choices that you get would be the Ethereal Crown, which when summoned, the equipped creature uses its summon ability of another creature and it gains 2 power and 1 health. There's the Ethereal Staff, which will summon a random Dwemer to this lane and gives the card 2 health. And we all love a bit of RNG. Sometimes it's Dwarven Spiders, sometimes it's Dwarven Colossi. And that's all the memes are about. And then we have the Ethereal Shield, which has the ability, when the equipped creature deals damage to a creature, shackle it, and this card gains ward, and it gains 1 power and 4 health. So it's probably one of the more powerful ones. But it's definitely something which is really nice and has a lot of RNG around it, which I quite like. And because it works with Dwemer, which is the main archetype in neutral, you know I've got to love it. It's just something which really calls out to me. and is something which, yeah, if they made one final set, is a must-have. Then we also have the Forge Master, an 8-cost 5/8 unique legendary, which has the ability when the Forge Master is damaged, summon a warped Dwarven Spider to the left lane and a warped Dwarven Sphere to the right lane. So this is a much stronger Dwarven Centurion. So the warped Dwarven Sphere is a 2-cost 3/2, which when summoned will deal 2 damage to a maximum of 2 creatures, and it's quite cool that it's got that bit of RNG and you don't really get to choose over which creatures it will do, or do you? I'm not really too sure, but it's one of those things where it will do a bit of damage, it will be on the field as a bit of threatening presence, and the warped Dwarven Spider basically just used to damage an opponent's unit or destroy something without any power. And it's quite nice just to have these 2 cards plop down every time this is hit. Obviously, if your opponent's just got something like a Javelin or want to silence, this would be a card that they'd aim to use it on. And because it's actually not got that much strength for its cost, I'd probably say it is quite balanced. I mean, maybe a 5/7, but then when you're getting to late game, it would just get destroyed instantly. So, yeah, no, I can see these stats being fair. I mean, maybe make the Warped Dwarven Sphere a 2/2, but then it would probably get destroyed very quickly. It's something just about trying to find that balance between what a regular Dwarven Centurion doesn't have and what would make the Forge Master stick out enough and also not make him too powerful. I'd say this is probably the best that you could get, because it's summoning more cards and it definitely has a very big boss monster vibe to it. Right, so the second collection we're going to look at from Alduin is his Stone collection. I've chosen out a few of my favourites here and I'm going to talk about them. So first we have the Apprentice Stone, which is when you damage an enemy with an action, you double the damage dealt. When this is paired with Arcano, it can get very messy, to say the least. But it also has the ability, when you are damaged by an action, double the damage dealt to you. So this is one of those cards which has a big old drawback, but then a really good effect for a low cost. And it's something which I think is really cool, because it means that if you're playing against another mage, you're kind of putting yourself at risk as much as they're at risk by you. Then we have the Atronach Stone, a 7-cost spellsword card with unlimited uses, and when summoned, you'll gain 2 extra magicka, and every time this card's activated, friendly creatures take half damage from actions until the end of your next turn. Okay, with this effect, I would say that it should either be you choose one creature to have this ability and unlimited uses, or it's got maybe 2 or 3 and it only does a lane. I feel like it doing your entire board until the end of your next turn, this would be something that you just keep on popping off every turn and would basically be an ongoing effect, so it would need to have a limit of uses and maybe only work along, I don't know, your opponent's turn. Then finally we have the Lover Stone, which is when you summon a creature with 2 power or less, summon another copy in the opposite lane, so like Wisp Mother, and friendly creatures in the right lane gain 2 power and in the left lane gain 2 health. This is something quite nice. I mean, I think it might want to be a 6 cost, but then again, cards like Divine Fervor kind of make that opinion redundant. But I do think this is a really nice card for Archer, as it allows them to make the most out of that Shadow Lane, and all their units which are vulnerable kind of have that extra health defending them, and because you've got a lot of movement, you can flex that around a lot. Okay, and for the final 3 cards that we're going to look at, we have the Shadow Stone, a 5-cost monk card with unlimited uses, and when activated, your target creature gains cover and ignores guards until the end of your next turn. Again, I think this is a really cool effect, but with these cards, I do think they should have like a limit on their use. It could be something like 5 or 6, because this is quite a good card and does deserve to have quite a lot of values to it. But yeah, it needs to have some form of limit, so you can't just use it every single turn for the entire game, in my opinion. Then we have the Lady Stone, which also has unlimited uses, and when activated heals a friendly creature, and if that creature is willpower, it can attack again. As long as this actually has to heal a creature and can't just be used on something with max health, I would say this is very, very fair and balanced, and could actually get away with unlimited uses, just because it requires your units to be wounded in the first place to get that second attack, even though it does mean you could slap one of your opponent's cards, have your creature be healed, slap another one, And then with the correct cards like Cauldron Keeper, you could just keep on smashing through their units, which is now why I'm starting to think that these cards do need limits. And then finally, we have the Warrior Stone, a 4-cost strength card, which when you summon a creature, give it an extra bit of power, and if it is a strength card, give it 2 power and 1 health. Really nice for aggro decks, and would definitely help you push a very far win, but because of that strength, I'd say it should probably be a 5 or 6 cost. But that's all the cards I'm going to review today, just because I want to keep this video below half an hour. I hope you guys have enjoyed. Stay safe, and if you want to see another one of these, hit like.